The first thing Commander Arthira noticed about the human was his smile. It was all teeth, white, sharp, and far too many of them. She didn't know whether it was a sign of aggression or madness. On her world, showing teeth meant threat. On his, apparently, it meant hello. The human stood in the center of the docking bay, sunlight from the nearby star catching the edge of his brown hair. His uniform was slightly wrinkled, his boots scuffed, and his smile unwavering. He looked completely out of place and perfectly at ease about it. Arthira folded her arms, her sleek violet armor catching the blue light of the hangar. "Do humans always look that way?" she whispered to her second officer, Zelt. Zelt tilted his three-eyed head. "Like that." Yes, that expression, the teeth, the unguarded face. "I think it's friendly, Commander." Arthira frowned. "Friendly, him? It looks like he's about to bite someone." Before Zelt could respond, the human stepped forward and saluted sort of. His hand was off by a few angles, but the attempt was enthusiastic. "Hi, I'm Alex Carter, United Earth Fleet. You must be Commander Arthira. It's an honor to meet you, ma'am." She blinked. His voice was warm and disarmingly casual. "Ma'am." No one had ever called her that before. She wasn't sure she liked it. "Commander will suffice," she said coolly. "Welcome aboard the Vireland Expeditionary Station. Please refrain from touching anything." Alex nodded eagerly, then immediately tripped on the ramp. Arthira caught him by the arm before he fell. His sleeve was soft, his skin warmer than she expected. He grinned up at her, completely unbothered. "Guess I should have paid attention to that low-gravity sign, huh?" Her first instinct was to scold him. Instead, something strange bubbled up inside her, a sound she barely recognized. A laugh, small, sharp, and startled out of her like air from a punctured suit. Alex's grin widened. "Hey, I got a laugh out of you already. I'll count that as a win." "Do not get comfortable," she said, straightening her posture. "This is a military outpost, not a playground." "Yes, ma'am, sorry, Commander," he said, holding up his hands. "No playgrounds, got it." But he was still smiling, always smiling. Later that day, Arthira found herself giving him the standard orientation tour. It was supposed to take 20 minutes. It took nearly 2 hours. Alex stopped to examine everything. "Whoa, this door opens sideways instead of up. Wait, is that plasma recycling? Does that button do what I think it does?" The last question nearly caused a hull breach. By the time they reached the observation deck, Arthira's patience was wearing thin. But when he pressed his face to the glass like a curious child, looking out at the violet swirl of the nebula, something in her softened. "It's beautiful," he whispered. She turned to look at him, surprised. "You've never seen one before." "Not like this. The ones near Earth aren't half as colorful. This one looks like," he hesitated, searching for a word, "like it's alive." For a moment she didn't see the clumsy, loud, unpredictable human. She saw wonder, real wonder, the kind her people had lost centuries ago when the stars became maps instead of mysteries. "You speak as if the universe still surprises you," she said quietly. "It does," he replied, smiling again. "Doesn't it surprise you?" Arthira looked out at the endless stars. "Not anymore." "Well," he said, glancing at her with that same infuriating grin, "then maybe you've been looking at it too long." She didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever spoken to her like that, lightly, honestly, without rank or ceremony. It was refreshing, unsettling, dangerous. As they walked back to the command deck, Alex fell into step beside her. "So, Commander," he said, voice casual, "what do your people do for fun around here?" "Fun," she repeated, almost choking on the unfamiliar word. "Yeah, you know, things you do because they make you happy." She raised a brow ridge. "We maintain order, we perform duties." "That's not fun," he said with mock seriousness. "That's just being alive." She didn't realize she was smiling until Zelt caught her doing it, and nearly dropped his data pad. That night, as the station lights dimmed, Arthira stood alone in her quarters, replaying the day in her mind. The human's laugh, his words, his eyes when he looked at the stars. "Do humans always look that way?" she murmured to herself again. Then she remembered how, when she turned toward him, his gaze had held hers steady, bright, unafraid. And for the first time in years, Commander Arthira felt something impossible. She wanted to see that smile again. For the next 3 days, the human was everywhere. Commander Arthira could not turn a corner without hearing his voice echo through the hallways, laughing with the engineers, asking the cooks what spicy meant, or somehow convincing a deck officer to let him test a plasma welder for science. At first, she told herself she found it annoying, distracting, unprofessional. But the station felt brighter. Everywhere Alex went, conversations followed, smiles appeared, and even the ship's lights seemed a little warmer. Arthira wasn't sure how he did it. Humans, apparently, ran on something invisible but contagious energy that wasn't mechanical, but emotional. "Commander." She stopped mid-step as Alex jogged up beside her, hair slightly mussed, carrying a tray of steaming cups. "I brought you coffee," he said, slightly breathless. "Coffee?" she repeated, eyeing the dark liquid suspiciously. "Yeah, best thing in the galaxy. Wake you right up." She raised an elegant brow ridge. "Is it toxic?" "Probably," he admitted cheerfully, "but worth it." Arthira hesitated, then took the cup. It was warm against her palm, the smell rich and strange. She took a cautious sip and froze. Her eyes widened. "This is intense." Alex laughed. "That's the spirit, humanity in a cup." She frowned, trying to keep her dignity. "It tastes like someone condensed the essence of battle into a liquid." He grinned. "Exactly, now you get it." He leaned against the wall beside her, sipping his own coffee like it was nothing. Arthira noticed a faint scar on his jaw, a nick from some old accident. It didn't make him look weak. It made him real. "Your species is strange," she said at last. "Thank you," he replied easily. "We try." That evening, they walked together through the observation ring, the section of the station with a clear view of the nebula. The glass stretched in all directions, stars painting their faces with light. Alex pressed his hand against the transparent barrier, eyes wide. "Back home," he said softly, "I used to stare at the night sky and wonder what was really out here. Now I know, and it's even crazier than I imagined." Arthira folded her arms, glancing at him sideways. "You risked your life to meet strangers across the stars." He smiled faintly. "Isn't that what everyone dreams of, meeting someone different?" She looked away, her chest tightening with an emotion she didn't want to name. "My people dream of peace, not adventure." "Peace is good," he said, "but adventure feels alive." He looked at her then, and for a heartbeat, the hum of the station vanished. His gaze was steady, bright, almost kind. It made her feel seen in a way no one had ever managed before. The next day, she caught him trying to ride a maintenance drone. "Carter," she barked, hands on her hips. He froze mid-hover, the drone wobbling under his weight. "Commander, you're just in time to witness human innovation." "You're standing on station property." "Technically hovering," he corrected. The drone made a high-pitched whine and dropped half a meter. He flailed, and she reached out instinctively, grabbing his hand before he could fall. The shock of contact stopped them both. His hand was rough, warm, a pulse beneath the skin. "Thanks," he said softly, his grin replaced by something gentler. "You always catch me." Arthira released his hand quickly, pretending her heart hadn't just skipped a beat. "Try not to make it a habit." He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "No promises." That night she found herself walking past the human quarters without reason. The corridor was quiet, the soft lights dimmed. She told herself she was checking security routes, but her gaze lingered on the door with his nameplate, LT, Alex Carter. She could hear faint music coming from inside, slow, melodic, unlike any rhythm her people used. Curiosity won. She tapped the door chime. Alex appeared, hair slightly tousled, eyes lighting up when he saw her. "Commander, you're still up." "I was inspecting," she said quickly. "Of course," he said, stepping aside. "Come on in then, inspect away." His quarters were cluttered but warm. There were small photos pinned to the wall, smiling humans, a blue sky, an ocean. "This is your home world?" she asked. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Earth, messy, noisy, full of mistakes, but it's ours." She studied the images, feeling something strange twist in her chest. "You miss it." "Every day," he admitted. "But some things," he glanced at her then, "make the distance worth it." Her voice caught. "You mean exploration?" He smiled, slow and knowing, something like that. When Arthira returned to her quarters that night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by the viewport, staring at the stars, the same stars the human looked at with such hope. For the first time in a long while she felt small, not in a bad way, just reminded. The universe was vast, but somehow one small, reckless human had made it feel closer. And as she closed her eyes, she realized she was smiling again. The fourth morning after the human's arrival began like any other, quiet hums through the corridor, the gentle glow of the nebula beyond the glass, and Commander Arthira pretending she wasn't waiting for a certain voice to appear around the next corner. She didn't have to wait long. "Morning, Commander." Alex Carter skidded into step beside her, holding a datapad upside down and sipping coffee with the confidence of someone who had no idea where he was going. "Do you ever sleep human?" she asked, hiding a small smile. "Not when the universe's most terrifyingly beautiful commander keeps assigning me fascinating reports about oxygen filters." Arthira tilted her head. "Flattery will not shorten your duties." "Didn't say it should," he said, flashing that impossible grin. "Just that it should be properly appreciated." She tried to scowl but failed. Somehow around him, her discipline cracked like ice in sunlight. Then the lights flickered. The station's steady hum stuttered, and the faint sound of alarms began to echo through the halls, distant, uncertain at first, then growing sharp and shrill. Arthira straightened, command mode snapping into place. "Status report," she barked into her comm. A voice crackled back. "Commander, we're detecting multiple signatures approaching from the dark side of the nebula, fast-moving, unidentified." Alex's eyes widened. "Pirates." "Or worse," she said, already striding toward the command deck. "Stay here." "Yeah, not happening." He followed, of course he did. The command deck was chaos. Officers shouting coordinates, screens flashing with static, sensor readings all over the place. "Shields up," Arthira ordered. "Charge plasma arrays, prepare interceptors for launch." Alex leaned over a terminal, scanning the readings. "These signals, they're not ships. They're too small, look." He enlarged the data feed. Hundreds of tiny blips, moving like insects. "Drones," he said grimly. "A swarm." Arthira frowned. "Automated weapons." "Yeah, someone's remote controlling them, probably raiders. If they hit the outer hull, they'll tear through your systems." "And how do you know this?" she asked. He gave her a crooked smile. "We've met worse back home." Before she could stop him, Alex ran to an auxiliary control panel, fingers flying across the alien interface. "Human, what are you doing?" "Trying to patch your defense grid through the manual relay. You guys have incredible hardware, just no idea how to improvise." Arthira crossed the room in 3 long strides. "Step away from that console." "Commander, if we wait for protocol, we're dead." Their eyes locked, hers cold steel, his burning determination. Then another explosion shook the ship, and the decision made itself. "Fine," she said tightly. "You have 1 minute." He grinned. I only need 40 seconds. Smoke filled the deck as Alex worked. Sparks leapt from wires, lighting his face in quick bursts. His hands were moving faster than her eyes could follow, rerouting power, overloading circuits, linking human tech to violent systems using sheer nerve and what looked like duct tape. "Where did you even get that?" she asked. "Brought it from Earth," he said with a wink. "Never leave home without it." The console groaned, lights flickering red to green. Arthira watched in disbelief as the defense grid came alive, shimmering brighter, stronger. "Power stabilizing," someone shouted. Alex smacked the console once. "See, works better if you hit it first." Another tremor shook the station, but this time, the shield held. The drone slammed against it and disintegrated, burning like meteors in atmosphere. The deck erupted in cheers. Arthira turned to Alex, who was leaning against the wall, grinning like a man who had just tamed the sun. "You're insane," she said quietly. He laughed. "Yeah, but apparently useful." Later in the medbay, Alex sat on a cot with a burn on his arm and a satisfied smile. Arthira stood beside him, pretending to review data. "You risked your life," she said at last. He shrugged. "You'd have done the same." "I am trained for such risk. You are not." He looked at her then, calm, warm, certain. "You're wrong about that, Commander. Humans don't wait to be trained to care." Something twisted in her chest again, that same dangerous, soft feeling. "You could have died," she said. "Yeah," he murmured, smiling faintly. "But at least I'd have gone out doing something good, and with excellent company." She turned away before he could see the small, unwilling smile tugging at her lips. That night, as the stars burned quietly outside her window, Arthira recorded her report. Hostile drone swarm neutralized. Defense grid stabilized through unconventional methods. She paused, staring at the screen. Then she added softly, almost to herself, "Human interference effective." And for reasons she would never put in an official report, she couldn't stop thinking about that smile. The next morning the station was quiet again, too quiet. Commander Arthira walked through the recovery bay, her boots clicking softly on the floor. The chaos of battle had left behind scorched panels, flickering lights, and a silence that felt heavier than noise. Her crew worked with quiet focus, repairing what they could, but her thoughts weren't on them. They were on him. She found Alex sitting cross-legged on the floor near the engineering wing, surrounded by wires and half-broken tools. His injured arm was still bandaged, but he was humming a human tune and smiling at a screen that displayed a pile of glowing circuits. "You should be resting," she said, arms crossed. He jumped a little, then turned to grin at her. "Morning, Commander. I'm just running diagnostics. Your systems are amazing. Terrifyingly overcomplicated, but amazing." "You disobeyed orders," she reminded him, stepping closer. "Technically, I just ignored them enthusiastically." Arthira gave a low sigh that sounded almost like a growl. "You could have been killed." "But I wasn't," he said, voice softening. "You don't need to worry." She hated that word, worry. It made her feel weak, but when he said it, she couldn't argue. Alex turned back to the console, wiping a streak of grease off his cheek. "You know," he continued, "your energy routing could be 10 times more efficient if you switched the conduits through a rotational relay." Her head tilted. "You're suggesting redesigning a Violin core system." He shrugged. "Just an idea. You guys think in straight lines. Sometimes you need a few curves." Before she could answer, the console sparked violently. Alex jerked his hand back, and the lights went out across half the bay. Smoke hissed from the panel. "Carter," she barked, "step back." But he was already on his knees, hands deep in the wiring again. "Just a short," he muttered. "I can fix it." Arthira knelt beside him despite herself, the acrid smell of burnt metal sharp in the air. "You're reckless." "Compliment accepted," he said through a grin. A spark flared bright and sudden. Arthira flinched back, her hand colliding with his. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. His skin was warm against hers, their faces inches apart. His eyes caught the glow of the sparking wires, blue, bright, alive. The world around them was chaos, alarms, smoke, power surges. But all she could feel was the pulse of his hand against her own. "Commander," he whispered, voice low and teasing, "you can let go now." She blinked, pulling her hand back so fast she nearly hit the console. "You are impossible." "Yeah," he said with a laugh, "but you smiled again." The emergency lights flickered back on and the bay filled with the soft hum of restored power. He had done it, somehow. Later, when the system checks were complete, Arthira walked with him through the observation corridor again. The nebula was calm now, violet and gold, glowing softly against the black. "I think she likes you," Alex said, nodding toward the window. "She." "The nebula," he said, grinning. "She looks peaceful when you're around." Arthira gave him a sidelong glance. "You talk to clouds of plasma." "Only the pretty ones." She tried not to laugh, but it slipped out, a quiet sound that echoed faintly against the glass. He looked at her then, surprised and happy all at once, and for a moment they stood there in silence, just watching the light ripple across the stars. "Why do you do that?" she asked finally. "Do what?" "Smile, even when everything is chaos." He shrugged, eyes still on the stars. "Because it's better than giving up. Humans, we don't always win, but we always try. Sometimes smiling is the only way to keep going." She studied him, this strange, fragile creature who laughed in danger and smiled through pain. "You're not like anyone I've ever met." "Good," he said softly. "I'd hate to be boring." The words lingered between them, light but heavy in meaning. That night Arthira found herself awake again, staring at the stars outside her quarters. She tried to read reports, but her mind wandered, back to his grin, his voice, the way he said, "We always try." Something about humans frightened her, not their strength, not their machines, but their hearts. The way they burned bright, even in the dark. She looked out at the nebula, the colors dancing like fire through the void, and whispered, "Maybe that's what makes them dangerous." Then softer, almost to herself, "Or beautiful." And somewhere down the hall, in a small human room full of laughter and clutter, Alex Carter smiled in his sleep, as if he'd heard her. The battle was over, the station safe, but something in Commander Arthira hadn't quite returned to normal. She still walked with the same confident stride, still spoke with the same command in her voice, but when she passed the medbay door and heard laughter inside, her steps slowed. It was his laughter. Soft, human, unguarded, the kind that filled a room and somehow made it feel like home. She hesitated in the doorway before stepping in. Alex sat on the edge of the cot, one arm in a light sling, his face clean but his hair still a mess of brown waves. He looked up as she entered, his smile blooming instantly. "Commander," he said, mock formal, "back to check if I'm still alive." "I was told you were refusing to rest," she replied coolly. "I'm resting," he protested, gesturing with his good arm toward the empty food tray beside him. "See, station rations, restful and tasteless." Her lips twitched. "You are remarkably difficult to discipline." He gave her that familiar lopsided grin. "You say that like it's a bad thing." Arthira crossed her arms, watching him for a long moment. He was impossible, reckless, impulsive, endlessly talkative, and yet she found herself drawn closer. Maybe it was because he didn't treat her like a distant commander or some intimidating alien being. To him, she was just her. And that was both confusing and dangerous. "How is the arm?" she asked, stepping nearer. He lifted it slightly. "Better. The doc said I'll live, but no heavy lifting for a few days." "Then perhaps you should avoid rewiring my defense grid." "Ah, so you did like my improvements," he teased. Arthira sighed, but couldn't hide the faint smile tugging at her mouth. You could have destroyed half the ship. Yeah, he said softly, eyes meeting hers. But I didn't, and I'd do it again if it meant saving everyone. She felt the air shift between them, quiet, heavy, alive. You risked too much, she murmured. He smiled faintly. Isn't that kind of the point? Risking something means it matters. For a moment, neither spoke. The sounds of the medbay faded, the hum of machines, the soft footsteps of passing nurses, leaving only the two of them in their own small, fragile world. Then Arthira spoke again, her voice lower, almost hesitant. Human emotions are confusing. You seem to care for others so easily. He tilted his head. That's how we survive. We look out for each other, even if it hurts sometimes. She studied his face. There was no fear in his eyes, no calculation, just warmth, pure, simple warmth. On my world, she said quietly, connection is considered a distraction. Feelings make judgment weak. He smiled. Then maybe that's what makes humans strong. We feel everything. We get scared, sad, furious, but we keep going anyway. Her throat tightened at his words. For someone so untrained, he spoke like a philosopher. Or maybe that was just the human way, clumsy but deeply honest. He shifted a little, trying to reach the glass of water beside his cot. Without thinking, Arthira picked it up and held it to him. Their fingers brushed, and that tiny spark of warmth shot through her again. Thanks, he said softly. You're full of surprises, Commander. I am full of discipline, she corrected. Sure, he said with a grin. Let's call it that. She wanted to be annoyed, but instead she laughed. It was small, quiet, but real. His eyes softened at the sound. You know, he said, I never thought I'd laugh with someone from another species, or that they'd laugh with me. And I never thought I'd meet a creature so stubborn it made the stars seem quiet, she replied. They smiled at each other, and in that small silence something changed. Something delicate but certain, like the moment before a heartbeat becomes a promise. When she finally left the medbay, Arthira paused outside the door. She took a slow breath, feeling the rhythm of her hearts, all three of them unsteady for the first time in years. Her second officer, Gelt, appeared at the corner and stopped when he saw her expression. Commander, he asked cautiously. She straightened immediately. The human is recovering. Gelt blinked. And you, Commander? I am evaluating new data, she said quickly, striding past him before he could ask more. That night as she sat in her quarters, the stars looked different, not distant, not cold. They shimmered like they were watching her, curious. She touched her chest, wondering if what she felt was weakness or something else. Far across the station, Alex sat awake too, staring out the same stars through his own small window. He smiled faintly and whispered into the quiet. Good night, Commander. And somehow, though neither knew why, they both felt a little less alone among the stars. The storm had passed, but neither of them had found peace. For days the station floated in calm silence, the stars steady and kind. Repairs were done, systems restored, and every crew member returned to their routines. Everyone, except Commander Arthira and Lieutenant Alex Carter. They still found each other in small ways. A nod in the hallway, a shared joke at the mess table, a quiet smile across the observation deck. But something had changed since the battle, something fragile, something neither dared to name. One night, Arthira was standing by the viewport again, her reflection shimmering against the glass. The nebula pulsed softly, like a living heart. She didn't hear him approach, but she felt it, the faint warmth of his presence before he even spoke. Couldn't sleep either. Alex's voice was gentle, tired but familiar. She turned slightly, pretending not to smile. Humans have very loud dreams. He chuckled. Yeah, we do, but it's usually the quiet ones that keep us awake. He stepped closer, and the air between them shifted, like gravity bending in a new direction. Arthira tried to focus on the stars. You should be resting, Lieutenant. Alex, he corrected softly. You can just call me Alex. She hesitated. That would be unprofessional. Then I guess I'll just have to earn the right, he said, grinning. She rolled her eyes, but her heart wasn't steady. You humans are endlessly persistent. It's kind of our thing, he said, leaning on the rail beside her. We don't stop until we reach what we're after. She looked at him then, really looked. The faint bruise on his cheek had faded, but his eyes still carried that same dangerous light. And what are you after, human? He didn't answer right away. He just smiled, softer this time. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Before she could reply, the comms crackled to life. Commander Arthira, incoming transmission from High Command. Her posture straightened instantly, rooted to my console. But as she turned, Alex caught a flicker of worry on her face. What's wrong? An unscheduled message means orders, she said quietly, and orders rarely come without consequences. When the message appeared, her worst fear was confirmed. Commander Arthira, by directive of the Violin Council, the human exchange officer is to be recalled to his fleet immediately. Prepare for transfer at 600. Alex blinked. Wait, what? Arthira didn't meet his eyes. It seems your stay here is over. That can't be right. I'm part of your team now. She turned sharply. You are not part of my team. You are a guest, and now your people want you back. Her tone was colder than she intended, and it hit him like a strike. He took a small step back. I see, he said quietly. So that's all I am then. Alex. No, it's okay. He forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. Guess I should pack, huh? He walked out before she could say another word. The hours that followed were long and silent. The station lights dimmed to night cycle, but Arthira couldn't rest. She kept packing her quarters, her heart's aching with something she didn't understand. When dawn cycle began, she found herself walking, not to the command deck, not to the hangar, but to his quarters. The door slid open. Alex was sitting by his window, staring at the fading nebula. His bag was packed. You came to make sure I leave on time, he asked, his tone light but his voice rough. She shook her head slowly. I came because I do not understand something. He looked up at her, waiting. When I speak to you, I feel unsteady, she admitted. When you smile, I feel something I cannot name. It is distracting, infuriating, and yet. Her voice softened. And yet, when I imagine this station without you, it feels empty. Alex stood up, his eyes wide. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I do not know what I'm saying, she confessed. Only that I don't want you to go. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, very gently, he stepped close enough that she could feel the warmth of him again. I don't want to go either, he said softly. But maybe I don't have to. Their eyes met, human blue and alien silver, and the air trembled between them. Then suddenly the station alarm blared. Red lights flashed. Unidentified ship entering orbit. A voice shouted through the intercom. Alex groaned. You've got to be kidding me. Arthira straightened, composure snapping back. Duty calls. He smiled, stepping beside her. Then let's save the universe again together. And as they ran down the corridor toward the command deck, side by side, she realized something extraordinary. The universe had just become a lot more complicated. And maybe a lot more beautiful. The red lights flashed across the station walls like a heartbeat gone wild. Commander Arthira and Alex ran side by side through the echoing corridors, boots striking the metal floors in perfect rhythm. The sound of their breathing filled the air, hers calm but sharp, his fast and human. Do you think it's another swarm? Alex asked between breaths. I don't know, she replied, but whatever it is, it chose the wrong station. Despite the alarm and the chaos, she felt something strange, not fear but certainty, because Alex was there, because they were together. When they reached the command deck, the view screen blazed with color. A massive ship loomed at the edge of the nebula, dark and angular, its lights pulsing like a living wound. Unidentified vessel, Gelt reported, his voice trembling. They're broadcasting no codes. Shields, Arthira asked. Online and steady. Good, keep them that way. Alex squinted at the readings. That's not a warship, he murmured. Too quiet, too cold. I've seen this pattern before. Arthira turned to him. Explain. It's not here to attack, it's here to scan. They're looking for something. Her eyes narrowed. Something or someone. He met her gaze. You think they're here for me? Your recall order came just before this ship appeared, she said softly. It's no coincidence. The ship sent out a ripple of energy that shook the station like a wave. Consoles sparked. The lights flickered. Arthira gripped the railing, her jaw tight. Alex jumped to the controls beside her. We can counter their frequency, he said, but I need to reroute your defense grid again. She gave him a look. The last time you rerouted something, you blew up half my power core. Yeah, but it worked, he shot back with a grin. She hesitated, then smiled despite herself. Fine, do it. He leaned over the console, his fingers moving fast. She could feel his focus, his determination, reckless, fearless, human. Rerouting complete, he said, slamming the final switch. The station hummed with renewed energy. The alien ship's pulse flickered, and then broke apart, its signal scattering like smoke. Cheers erupted across the command deck. Gelt raised all 6 arms in victory. They're retreating, Commander. Alex whooped. Didn't even need duct tape this time. Arthira exhaled slowly, tension melting from her shoulders. She turned to him, her voice quieter now. You did it again. He grinned. We did it. When the station calmed, Arthira and Alex stood by the observation window once more, the nebula glowing like a sea of light. The order from her high command still lingered, but neither of them spoke of it. The silence between them was not awkward, it was full of things unsaid, of feelings that had no words in either of their languages. Finally, Alex broke the quiet. So, he said softly, what happens now? Arthira looked out at the stars. You were meant to leave. Yeah, he said, eyes on her instead. But maybe the universe doesn't always care about orders. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. You cannot stay, my people. Will have to get used to me, he interrupted gently, because I'm not leaving without saying what I need to. Her heart fluttered painfully. And what is that? He took a step closer. That you changed me. I came out here looking for stars, but I found you. And now, I don't want to go back to a world that doesn't have you in it. Arthira's breath caught. Her people didn't speak love easily. It wasn't in their culture to say such things aloud. But humans, it seemed, didn't fear what was real. You speak as if the universe is small, she whispered. He smiled. It feels that way when you're standing next to me. The nebula's light glowed across their faces, soft violet on silver skin, golden reflections in blue eyes. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Arthira reached up, her hand trembling slightly, and touched his cheek. His skin was warm beneath her fingers, alive and fragile and real. Do humans always look that way? She asked softly. He blinked. What way? Like they are about to change everything. He smiled then, that same bright, fearless smile she'd seen the first day he arrived. Only when someone gives us a reason to. And then, before she could second-guess herself, she leaned forward. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. But when her forehead touched his, the way her people shared trust, and he gently rested his hand over hers, the universe seemed to hold its breath. For a heartbeat, the stars felt close enough to touch. Later, the human ship came for him, as orders demanded. But when the time came, Arthira wasn't at the docking bay to watch him leave. She couldn't. Instead, she stood at the observation window, staring at the bright trail of his ship fading into the stars. Then her comms crackled. "Commander," came Alex's voice, soft, full of laughter. "I told them I'm staying for a few more cycles. Hope that's okay with you." Arthira smiled, slow, impossible to hide. "Permission granted, human." "Good," he said, his voice warm, "because I still owe you a sunrise." The line went silent, and beyond the glass, the nebula shimmered brighter, as if the universe itself was smiling too. Two worlds, two hearts, one sky. And for the first time, Arthira believed that maybe, just maybe, the stars weren't so far apart after all. Weeks passed, but the station no longer felt the same. It felt alive. Alex's laughter echoed through the halls again, softer now but deeper, like it belonged there. Arthira no longer avoided it. Sometimes she even joined in. They worked side by side, not commander and human, but partners, equals. One evening, as the nebula shimmered outside, Alex brought her a small glass sphere. Inside it, tiny specks of light drifted slowly, like captured stars. "What is this?" she asked, awed. "Something from Earth," he said. "We call it a snow globe. I wanted to give you your own little universe." She held it gently, the glow reflecting in her silver eyes. "It's beautiful." "So are you," he said softly. She looked up, her heart steady now. "You humans always fall for impossible things." He smiled. "That's how we make them possible." Outside, the nebula pulsed, brighter than before, two worlds, one rhythm. And as they stood together, hands brushing in the soft light, Arthira realized this wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of one, written across stars, carried by courage, and sealed with something that even the universe couldn't explain.